Remember when the world was a mess in 2008? The global financial crisis was shaking industries across the world. Banks were collapsing, economies were on the brink of disaster, companies were going under. No one was safe, not even Formula One, one of the most lucrative sports on the planet. Car makers Honda, who were, and still are, one of the biggest manufacturers in motorsport, shockingly announced they were pulling out of Formula One with immediate effect. They had a long, rich history with F1 as engine manufacturers and full team owners that stretched all the way back to 1964. But just like that, they were gone. Suddenly, you've got hundreds of staff thinking, right, what now? For all the engineers, mechanics, designers and factory workers who'd spent years building their careers in Formula One, it was a really worrying time. The cars were collecting dust in the factory, but no one knew if they'd ever race again. Sponsors began pulling back. Suppliers started asking questions. Rival teams assumed another competitor had just disappeared. For most people inside the paddock, it looked like the end of the story. But this is where it gets interesting, because it wasn't. It was just the beginning. Step forward Ross Brawn, one of the sharpest minds in Formula One. He wasn't just another team boss. He'd been the technical director at Ferrari during Michael Schumacher's most dominant era, and he was regarded as the mastermind behind the Germans' 7 World Championship titles. Brawn's reputation inside the paddock wasn't just about designing fast cars, it was about strategy and race management. He had this amazing ability to read races. He knew when to pit, when to stay put, when to gamble on tyres, and when to protect a lead. Engineers respected him, drivers trusted him, and rivals, they feared him. So when news spread that Ross Brawn was trying to rescue the collapsing Honda team, people in Formula One immediately paid attention. If anyone could pull off something extraordinary with limited resources, it was him. And when Honda had to pull out, what he did next was unbelievable. Somehow he negotiated a deal to buy the entire Formula One team. Not for $1 million, not for £1,000, not even £100. No, he paid just £1. It wasn't a symbolic gesture either. Honda handed the team over just to avoid shutting it down completely, and Brawn took on the responsibility of keeping the operation alive, and perhaps, most importantly, of saving hundreds of jobs in the process. Brawn was a hero. But surviving was one thing, competing in Formula One and winning, well, that was something else entirely. What happened next would become one of the most unbelievable underdog stories in the history of the sport. What made the situation even more dramatic was how sudden, how unexpected, and downright shocking Honda's withdrawal had been. Formula One teams normally plan their future several years in advance because you've got contracts with sponsors, engine suppliers and drivers. They're negotiated way before the season even begins. But Honda's decision came overnight. Executives in Japan had looked at the financial crisis spreading across global markets, and they decided they couldn't continue spending hundreds of millions on a racing team. The announcement shocked the paddock. It wasn't as if Honda was a struggling backmarker. They were a major manufacturer with a long history in motorsport. Over the decades, they'd powered championship-winning teams and worked with some of the most famous drivers in racing history. So when they pulled out, it sent a clear message. Even the biggest companies weren't safe from the economic turmoil sweeping the world. The mood inside the Brackley factory was tense. Hundreds of engineers and mechanics continued turning up to work every day, but no one knew how long the team would survive. How do you think the staff there felt in the midst of a financial crisis? They were updating their CVs and talking with rival teams, looking for opportunities elsewhere in the paddock. But many of them chose to stay. Why? Well, because they believed in the car that they were building. They thought it could be something special. If the team could somehow survive long enough to put it on the track, there was a chance, even if it was just a small chance, that it could surprise people. Ross Brawn believed that chance was worth fighting for. The new Brawn GP team started preparing for the 2009 season, and already they were under massive pressure. They had none of the usual luxury afforded to other teams who spent years planning their cars, developing upgrades and securing sponsors. The team had almost no external funding, no title sponsor, and their branding was so minimal that the cars initially appeared almost white when they rolled out of the garage. But they had something incredibly valuable. They had a car. Long before Honda pulled out of the sport, the team's engineers had already been developing a 2009 machine under a completely new set of F1 regulations. Those rule changes were huge, and they reshaped aerodynamics across the entire grid. Most teams were still trying to figure out how to interpret the new regulations, but Brawn's engineers had found something clever. Very clever indeed. At the heart of their car was a small but ingenious aerodynamic idea, the double diffuser. Now, if you're thinking, what the hell is a diffuser, then pin your ears back. It sits at the back of a Formula One car and it helps manage the airflow underneath it. By accelerating air out of the rear of the car, it effectively sucks the car downwards towards the track. That creates a downforce without adding drag, so more downforce basically means more grip. More grip means more speed, fast around the corners, which of course means faster laps. What Brawn's engineers realised was that the new regulations had a loophole. It meant they could design a diffuser with 2 airflow channels instead of 1. That's why it's called the double diffuser. However, Brawn weren't the only ones who saw this loophole. Toyota and Williams also interpreted the regulations in a similar way, and they arrived with their own versions of the double diffuser. But Brawn had combined the idea with an amazingly well-balanced car, which seemed to unlock the full potential of the concept. Remember, in Formula One, most lap time isn't gained on the straights, it's gained in the corners and over the course of a lap, and it's those tiny advantages that can make the difference when it matters most. Brawn's car was so dangerous because it produced this extra grip without increasing drag. So what does this mean? It means the car was fast on the straights as well, and that combination of strong cornering performance and competitive top speed made the car incredibly well balanced. Drivers described it as a car that just felt easy to drive, and in Formula One, when a car gives a driver confidence, that's when lap times really start to fall. At first, rival teams didn't even notice it. Then, pre-season testing began, and suddenly everyone realised something was very, very wrong. The Brawn GP car wasn't just fast, it was very, very fast. During winter testing before the 2009 season, other teams started getting nervous when they started to look at the timing screens. Brawn drivers Jenson Button and Rubens Barrichello kept appearing near the top. At first, teams thought maybe it was just a fuel load trick. Maybe they were running lighter fuel to simulate qualifying runs. But the lap times kept coming, day after day and track after track. And eventually, the paddock realised something weird was happening. Could the team that nearly disappeared only weeks earlier actually have the fastest car in Formula One? Obviously, rival teams weren't happy. Ferrari, Renault, Red Bull and others immediately protested the double diffuser design, arguing that it broke the spirit and possibly the new regulations of the sport. The issue went to the FIA, but the governing body looked into it. They agreed the diffuser was completely legal, and Brawn GP could keep it. Just like that, the £1 underdog team had a major technical advantage heading into the new season. But the controversy around the diffuser didn't disappear. Even after the FIA said the decision was legal, rival teams kept arguing that they had an unfair advantage. Behind the scenes, engineers across the paddock scrambled to develop their own versions of the double diffuser. But Formula One development takes time. It's not as if redesigning aerodynamic components is something teams can do in a few days. You have to do wind tunnel testing, simulations, manufacturing and track validation, and all of this can take weeks or even months. That meant Brawn GP had a crucial window of opportunity because for the first part of the season, they were the only team fully exploiting the diffuser concept. And in F1, even a small technical advantage can be decisive. A few hundredths or tenths of a second per lap might not sound like much, but over the course of an entire race distance, it can translate into huge gaps between cars, the difference between winning and losing. For the engineers at Brawn GP, the challenge then became protecting that advantage for as long as possible, because eventually the rest of the grid would catch up, because in Formula One, they always do. The 2009 Formula One season started in Australia. Even after testing, most fans and commentators still didn't think Brawn GP would actually challenge for wins. Pre-season hype in Formula One can be misleading, but qualifying quickly changed that when Jenson Button put the Brawn GP car in pole position. Teammate Rubens Barrichello qualified right behind him, and the team that had barely existed 3 months earlier had locked out the front row of the grid. Race day only made the story even more dramatic. When the lights went out, there was chaos behind the Brawn cars as several drivers tangled in the first corners. Button was calm at the front and managed the race perfectly before going on to win. Barrichello had a tougher start, dropping position early on, but he fought back through the field to finish second. A 1-2 finish for Brawn GP in their first ever Formula One race, and at that point, the whole paddock was thinking, what on earth just happened? Was it a fluke, or could they do it again? Well, the next race in Malaysia only strengthened the feeling that something remarkable was happening. The Sepang circuit is challenging in a different way to Melbourne. Intense heat, high tyre degradation and unpredictable weather. Once again, the Brawn car proved incredibly strong. Button started from pole position and he quickly showed that same pace the team had in Australia. But Sepang had a surprise in store. Halfway through the race, torrential tropical rain flooded the circuit, causing officials to stop the race entirely. Conditions were far too dangerous to carry on and the result was declared early, with only half the points awarded. Even in the chaos, Button was the winner. 2 races, 2 wins, proving the opening day was no fluke. But the season wasn't going to be a simple march to the title. At the next race in China, heavy rain turned the event into a survival challenge. On that day, it was Red Bull Racing and their young star Sebastian Vettel who won. Deep Dive Sports Stories is powered by our friends at Betway. For exclusive acquisition offers, free bets and much more, download the Betway app now, showing the rest of the paddock that Brawn's early dominance wouldn't go completely unchallenged. By the time Formula One arrived in Bahrain for the 4th race of the season, the rest of the grid realised they were off the pace. Button won again. Red Bull, Ferrari and McLaren, they began accelerating their development programs to try and close the gap, but catching Brawn GP wasn't easy. Button won 6 of the first 7 races, and by the time the championship reached the middle of the calendar, he'd built a lead that would prove crucial later in the year. Suddenly, this didn't look like a fluke anymore, and by this point in the season, something interesting was happening inside the paddock. The perception of Brawn GP had completely changed, because at the start of the year, many teams assumed their pace might fade once the season got underway. But race after race, the Brawn car kept performing no matter what the conditions or distance, and in Formula One, that kind of consistency is incredibly hard to achieve. The tyres introduced that season were sensitive to temperature and wear, and cars that pushed too hard would often lose grip late in races, dropping dramatically down the order. But that wasn't a problem for the Brawn car, and it seemed unusually gentle on its tyres. That allowed Button and Barrichello to run longer stints and maintain a strong pace, while rivals struggled with degradation. It was another subtle advantage that made the team even harder to beat. But Formula One never stays still for long, and while Brawn GP had started the season brilliantly, the development race was only just beginning. It was becoming more and more apparent that Brawn GP were genuine title contenders. Okay, so the car was quick, but it didn't operate itself. Of course, a huge part of the team's success came from its drivers. Jenson Button had been in the sport for nearly a decade by that point. He'd always been a talented driver, but he'd never consistently had a championship-winning car. But in 2009, everything clicked. His driving style was smooth, which helped preserve tyres and maintain consistent lap times. That's exactly what the Brawn car needed. Rubens Barrichello, on the other hand, had brought loads of experience, having spent years as Michael Schumacher's teammate at Ferrari. Barrichello understood the pressure of competing for championships. His technical feedback helped the engineers refine the car throughout the season, and together, the pair formed one of the most balanced driver lineups on the grid. As the season moved into European races, the chasing pack began to fight back. Red Bull in particular made massive progress. Their young driver, Sebastian Vettel, began challenging Brawn for race wins, while Ferrari and McLaren started to improve their performances after slow starts. The championship battle tightened, and tracks like Monaco and Silverstone tested the cars in completely different ways, because those tracks have tight street circuits, high-speed corners and unpredictable weather. Brawn no longer dominated quite as easily as they had at the start of the season, but crucially, they kept scoring points. And this is where the psychology of a championship campaign really begins to matter. Because early in the season, Brawn had been the hunters. They were the surprise package, attacking races with nothing to lose. But by the middle of the year, everything had changed. Now, they were the team everyone wanted to beat. They had a target on their back, and they were being hunted down. Every rival team was analysing their data. Every aerodynamic upgrade introduced by Ferrari, McLaren and Red Bull was designed with one goal in mind: closing the gap to Brawn. And with every race weekend, the pressure on the team increased. People were thinking, could they handle the heat? For Jenson Button especially, the mental challenge was massive. Drivers often talk about how difficult it is to protect a championship lead. When you're chasing the title, you can afford to take risks, but when you're leading the championship, every decision becomes more complicated. Push too hard, you risk a crash or a mechanical failure. Play it safe, rivals might catch you. So he had to find the perfect balance between being aggressive and staying consistent, and that balance would ultimately decide the championship. Even when Brawn didn't win, Button consistently finished near the front, keeping his championship lead. But one of the most memorable and emotional moments of the season actually came from Rubens Barrichello. He'd spent years in Formula One and he was respected, but he was often overlooked. When he was at Ferrari, he played the role of Michael Schumacher's loyal teammate, sometimes even being asked to give up wins to help Schumacher's championship campaigns. So when Barrichello finally took victory for Brawn GP later in the season, after everything he'd been through, that one meant a lot. That moment came at the European Grand Prix in Valencia. After years of playing the supporting role at Ferrari, Barrichello drove the perfect race and won. His voice was cracking over the radio because he was so emotional. Years of frustration, loyalty and perseverance had finally paid off. For Barrichello, it wasn't just another race win, it was validation, and it was proof that he could still win on merit. And for Brawn GP, it showed something important as well. This wasn't just Jenson Button's championship. This was a team effort. By the final stretch of the season, the title fight had become a tense battle between Brawn GP and Red Bull. Vettel was pushing hard to catch Button in the standings, but Button's early run of victories had given him a cushion. Every race became a strategic chess match. Tyre choices, pit stop timing, fuel strategy. It's these small decisions that can decide entire championships. The pressure inside the Brawn garage must have been huge. And remember, this was a team operating on a fraction of the budget of its rivals, yet somehow they were about to pull off something extraordinary. What made the story even more remarkable was how small the Brawn GP operation really was. Teams like Ferrari and McLaren had massive budgets, extensive engineering departments, and decades of experience competing at the highest level. But Brawn was getting by on a much tighter budget, with lots of people inside the team doing multiple roles just to keep the project moving forward. Engineers worked long hours refining the car. Mechanics travelled around the world knowing every race result mattered enormously to the team's future. For Brawn GP, this wasn't just about winning races, it was existential. It was about their survival. Every strong result helped attract potential sponsors. Every podium finish reinforced the belief that the team could compete with the biggest names in the sport. As the season went on and they consistently put results together, that belief began to spread beyond the garage. Fans started to embrace the Brawn story. Commentators began talking about the possibility of one of the greatest underdog victories in sporting history. But the team still had one final challenge. They had to finish the job. The decisive moment arrived at the Brazilian Grand Prix in the penultimate race of the season. Starting from way back in the grid after a difficult qualifying session, Button fought his way back through the pack to finish fifth, a position he finished in 3 of the final 10 races. In those 10 races, he only finished on the podium twice, but he was always scoring points week in, week out, and that consistency was more than enough to secure the 2009 Formula One World Championship. Unbelievable! Jenson Button had done it, but it got even better for Brawn GP. Soon after they did the double, they also wrapped up the Constructors' Championship as well. It was a fairy tale ending to an extraordinary season. The team that had been bought for just £1 had conquered Formula One. The story doesn't end there, and what happened next is what makes this story even bigger than just one incredible season. Within months of Brawn's history-making season, along came Mercedes. They didn't get involved in the team, they bought it. After watching Brawn GP win both championships, Mercedes moved in quickly, and in November 2009, they agreed a deal to purchase a majority stake in the team, believed to be around 75%. And while the exact figure was never officially confirmed, reports at the time suggested the deal was worth in the region of £100 million, maybe more, which, when you think about it, isn't bad for a team that had effectively been bought for £1 less than 12 months earlier. Ross Brawn stayed on to run the team, helping helping oversee the transition from his underdog operation into a full manufacturer-backed outfit. And for Mercedes, it wasn't just about buying a team. They were buying infrastructure, they were buying talent, and most importantly, they were buying a team that knew how to win. Success is never guaranteed, of course, and Mercedes spent a few years rebuilding, developing the team, and putting the right pieces in place. Lewis Hamilton joined them in 2013, but then everything changed. In 2014, Formula One introduced a completely new era of hybrid engines, and Mercedes absolutely nailed it. From that point on, they went on one of the most dominant runs the sport has ever seen. Between 2014 and 2021, Mercedes won 8 consecutive Constructors' Championships, 8 in a row. And who was at the centre of that dominance? Lewis Hamilton. When he joined Mercedes, people questioned it, but it turned out to be one of the most important moves in F1 history. With Mercedes, Hamilton won 6 World Championships, taking him to 7 world titles overall, tying the all-time record with Michael Schumacher. He also broke records, becoming the first driver in history to pass 100 race wins and 100 pole positions. What Mercedes built wasn't just a successful team, it was a dynasty. And the crazy part is, all of it came from the same factory that Ross Brawn had saved back in 2008. In other words, the modern-day Mercedes outfit we see now can be traced directly back to that chaotic winter when the world was in turmoil and the £1 deal that saved the team.